Hey, welcome to Connect the Dots Learning Center podcast, episode 1. Today, we're going to be talking with Nat Udwin. Nat is an infant development airway and reflexive feeding specialist. Big words for a pediatric OT. On Instagram, most people know Nat as Nat the Baby OT. Home for Nat is in Atlanta, Georgia, but they work with families from all over the world. A little bit about Nat's practice. Around 2015, Nat's eyes were opened to the world of reflex integration. It completely transformed their practice. Nat was starting to see skills that were sticking and carrying over into other aspects of daily life for the clients that they were seeing. It was the foundational approach to therapy that Nat had been trying to figure out for years. After a couple of years of learning to integrate or inhibit retained reflexes, Nat began to ask why. Why were all these kids retaining these reflexes from infancy into childhood? What was happening developmentally to change their trajectory? Nat needed to know. So Nat dove headfirst into infant development courses. They quickly learned about the importance of human connection and emotional regulation in early infancy, as well as the developmental importance of a strong breathing and oral motor skills to support a lifetime of healthy growth. Nat, alongside some incredible mentors and colleagues, has spent the past 7 years mastering their understanding of infant development to not only become an infant development specialist, but to create what is now the foundation of a holistic airway-focused practice for children of all ages. Let's welcome Nat Udwin. All right, well, welcome, Nat.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for being here today. And like I said, I watched you on that other podcast the other day, and you said you've got just kind of a season of things going on. Can you just tell us a little bit about your journey, kind of how you got into infant feeding, and what inspired you to get where you are right now?
Life. Sink or swim mentality. But let's see. Infant feeding. How did I get into that? It was totally accidental. I did not want to work with babies. I worked with kids. I knew kids, like kids, art, medicine. Those were my, I wanted to do something with that in undergrad. I didn't know about OT. It took me a while. I stumbled into it. I kept asking questions and eventually found it. And it was the perfect fit for me. But I knew I always wanted to work with kids. So that part came easily. I got a peds job right out of school. I was working in schools and it was terrible. I hated it. It was not my cup of tea because it wasn't, I didn't get the quality time that I wanted to spend with the kids. It was really more consultative. So anyway, I wanted more of a clinical role. So that's basically what I got. And I worked in a practice, well, actually ended up opening my own practice in Nashville after only being out of school for about a year and a half.
Wow.
Totally an accident as well. I had intentions of doing it, but the timing was right. Lots of things happened at the right time to make it where it was either find a new job or start my own. And so I ended up starting my own. And
had you worked a little bit in a clinic in that first year?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a little background to go off of.
Yes. And also the school setting, I worked for a company that contracted with the schools and they also had an outpatient clinic. And so on days off or in the afternoons or when school was out, I worked in their clinic. So I got a little bit of both. I definitely got clinical experience. But yeah, it was trial by fire. So
yeah. Okay. So you're a new grad. You're just opened your practice. Yeah.
And then it grew really fast. Nashville was sleepy and booming, or it was starting to buzz at the time. And it was the right time to be starting a new business in Nashville because Nashville 10 years ago was not what it is today. So it grew very quickly, outgrew us. My wife at the time and I did it together and it grew fast. And so we became known as the Reflex specialist in the region. That's why people sought us out because we knew what to do with primitive reflexes and sensory motor challenges. And we kind of just thought outside the box a little bit. And that was exciting. But then So reflexes added a nice layer to my practice because I didn't know about that. We don't learn really about them except for in the Peabody, at
Right.
school. And you
Right.
learn about normal reflexes, but you don't know what happens when they don't work.
Hmm. It was just like, oh
Um,
yeah, that's the 18R, but I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that changed my practice for a while. And then I kept getting stuck. I kept running into like why I knew reflexes, the more I learned about reflexes, and there weren't courses to take at the time. It makes me sound really old, but really reflexes have only been around in terms of, they've always been around, but in terms of all these continuing ed courses, the last like 5, 6, 7 years,
Right.
10 years ago, there were books to read, and there were articles, and there was research, and I read everything. I just devoured it. And they're just movement patterns. So I learned myself. I practiced, I learned, I watched, I observed, but I realized like, okay, so all these kids should have been doing these things when they were babies and they didn't. Why? I
Mhm.
kept getting stuck. So that's where I sought out more infant development courses,
Okay.
and then realized that there was a huge feeding component to that, which obviously just didn't really occur to me because I wasn't interested in being a feeding therapist. Because
Right.
really all I'd been exposed to was a sensory based feeding approach, and it didn't really make sense to me. It wasn't my cup of tea. But once I started to see how the coordination and the oral motor complex plays into feeding and how integral that is for the trajectory really of these kids' development, that was a total eye opener, total game changer for me.
Mhm.
So I sort of accidentally became an infant feeding specialist
You put your
because
feet down. You didn't want to, but you were really
well,
drawn
there was
into
no
it,
one in
weren't
my
you?
area to do it. And honestly, it was fascinating. It was answering all of my questions as to why all of these older kids were struggling so much with things that they should have acquired, like skills, like visual skills that they should have acquired when they were 6 months old or 3 months old, and why tummy time was so hard and why none of them could crawl. And, just it answered all of my questions. So I it was fascinating. And if I like something, I'm going to keep learning it, and I'm going to keep understanding, and I'm going to keep asking why. And that's what I did. So I kept taking courses in, I didn't really take, there definitely weren't OT specific courses. There were um, myofunctional therapy courses. So I learned about the jaw, and I learned about breathing, and I learned about the tongue and the mouth and all of that. And that was so foundational and eye opening for me.
Mhm.
And then I learned about breathing. Again, just I took courses in the things that mattered, like in the bits and pieces and parts of the body that I really needed to know about. It wasn't so much like, am I going to get credit for these? Because some of them I did, some of them I didn't, some I had to petition for credit, but it was really like, what do I need to know next?
Right.
And so I pieced all of it together, and, I'm still learning every day. I'm learning.
Yeah.
There's always so much more that I don't know, but that's how I became an infant feeding specialist. So,
Awesome. Can you kind of piece together for me, because I know people are going to listen and newer grads, but
mhm,
that reflex piece with feeding and
sure.
breathing, like connect that like you're explaining to a parent or a new grad.
Okay. And also just disclaimer, I'm about to release a course about all this too. It's being beta tested right now by some of my peers. And so I'm just working on that. I'm getting I'm in the feedback stages. So,
Yeah.
but all about basically, it's called developmental detours, and about where these kids take detours, because
Mhm.
it starts, not all the kids that we work with, but a lot of them which have these developmental delays, they started in infancy. And so my job is to explain why. And
Mhm.
so reflexes. Okay. For anybody that basic understanding of reflexes is they're there to help us survive before we can choose to use certain movement patterns,
Mhm.
before we have volitional movement. And they are sensory motor reactions. They basically are movements that happen in response to something in our environment, something that elicits a response from our sensory system. Our
Mhm.
sensory system sends a message to our brain stem. We don't make a choice, we just do it. So that's why, like, if there's a loud noise, we startle. That's that moral response, at least in babies. But we want to, most of our reflexes should go away. We still have reflexes as a grown
Right.
up. And honestly, all of these primitive reflexes are all still there. They're in our brainstem, especially in case we have a trauma or in case we've experienced something so great that we basically just need to go into autopilot. They are there to protect us, but they are not there to be running in the foreground all the time. And so what
Right.
happens is they get in the way. But we should we should we should use them. And the more we use them, the more we start to realize, oh, wait, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe, and this is like a 3, 4, 5 month old baby. Maybe I want to grab that and I want to put it, over there instead of putting it in my mouth, because reflexively, we've always just touched something and it went straight to our mouth. But now, oh, I am strong enough to work against this reflex and to put it somewhere I choose. And so there's a massive strength component to reflex integration. And basically, you have to have stability. You have to have postural control in order to integrate them and to override them. And we have to be able to work through them. But what happens is when kids have feeding difficulties, they compensate and they use the rest of their body to get the milk out somehow, whether they're bottle feeding or breastfeeding. They usually do this. They're really tight with their fist. They have an asymmetry that they maybe had from like in utero positioning, but that doesn't go away because they're stuck using that same position to try to compress the milk out. There's usually a compressive force. Sometimes there's retraction, which is also kind of compressive. But essentially we use maladaptive movement patterns or compensatory patterns to feed, which disrupt normal development. They get in the way. And we use a lot of tension. Also, those babies, there's a lot of tension in babies that don't feed well because tension fixes joints into place and it masks for strength. It doesn't allow for very refined movements, but it allows for gross movements that allow us to feed okay sometimes. And so tension is not strength. And if we don't have strength and we just have tension or we have floppiness, we're not going to integrate our reflexes. We're not going to cross our midline. We're not going to coordinate things the way that nature intended. And then we just take shortcuts the rest of our life. Or then you end up back in OT in OT when you're 3 or 4 or 13, or, you have an anxiety disorder when you're 35. So,
wow, this is amazing. It's such good information. Such good information. Excited for you.
Thanks.
What you have to offer. Yeah. I mean, I can tell what you do differently than just kind of your average clinic, but kind of explain it to everybody else. Like, why would somebody come to your clinic versus just maybe a clinic down the street?
It's a really good question. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday who was telling me about their 15-month-old grandson and was explaining some concerns, some basic concerns, and just kept mentioning little bits and pieces here and there. So there were some feeding concerns. There was some open mouth posture, breathing concerns, and a lot of asymmetry, a very funky gait pattern. And so what they're talking about are things that, especially in the younger kids, we're kind of looking at the whole body. So initially they mentioned something to do with the child's mouth. And, a lot of people assume that's a speech therapist. But really, I mean, I deal with oral motor issues, deficits, dysfunction. But I definitely don't just look at the mouth. So I explained to them a huge part of that and having jaw instability, having a jaw shift, some weakness is actually that baby's hips. And so I look at things as cliche as the word is holistically. I am really looking at the whole body and how it contributes to a fine motor function like feeding, or sometimes it is handwriting. It's not my favorite thing to treat, but I can, because again, and what's so cool about, I mean, feeding and handwriting, they're both fine motor functions. And sometimes we don't even really have to work on them that much for them to get better. When we've put all the big pieces in place, it's really fun. I don't really enjoy sitting and making kids write or draw or color if that's not what they're into. And so a lot of times we just work on the proximal stability, but it's more than stability. Stability is the foundation, but we also have to integrate those reflexes, because if you don't integrate the reflexes, you're still not going to be able to use both sides of your brain very efficiently. And we're kind of going to be stuck. Like we're going to just trade one habit for another. And so I guess my approach is very much just the whole body. In the younger kids, I would say younger, meaning like 2 and under, I'm doing a lot of, I'm not replacing PT. I'm not replacing speech, but I am overlapping with them a lot
It's so
because
hard not to. Yeah.
I'm treating the whole body, right? And if there are deficits or there are things that require more focused attention, and maybe I can't do that all in one session, or we just need a little bit something more intense or a more specific modality, I'll refer out for sure. I have great PT and speech colleagues locally. But I mean, I like it. What's nice is if we treat the foundation, all the other stuff gets better. And so I really a bottom up approach kind
Mhm.
of person. So,
Awesome.
um, yeah. And I think most people are surprised that I also do the oral motor stuff,
Uh-huh.
like the feeding and the kind of breathing and chewing skills, because they assume they need speech for that.
Mhm.
Um, and speech
It's just a
therapists certainly can do
misconception,
that.
right? Yeah.
Totally. And it makes sense because they treat the head and
Mhm.
the mouth and,
Right.
but
Yeah.
so can I. It's part of the
Right.
can treat the whole body.
Right.
So people really just don't know what OT does at all.
No. No.
And especially once they come to me, I mean, again, my evaluation, even my intake forms, like they're so different than what parents are used to filling out because I'm asking, let's say I have a 6-year-old, I'm asking questions about their feeding history. I
Mhm.
want to know, did they have trouble breastfeeding? Did they have trouble bottle feeding? Did they have torticollis? And the parents are like, why did you ask me that?
Right. That's so
Explain it.
long ago. I don't remember, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I was like, look at your phone. Yes, you do.
Yeah, right. I
What's nice
know.
about iPhones is it's always on there.
Yes, for sure.
So
Do you have a particular like reflex integration program that you follow or book, or have you just kind of pulled all the
it is
information
DIY.
together? There's
Literally,
so much stuff out
I
there.
have never taken a formal reflex integration
Okay.
course. I
Okay.
am 100% self-taught because it was necessity at the
Mhm.
time. And I've just, I mean, there are ones that I would like to take if I could afford them.
Uh-huh.
Um, but honestly, I mean, what I do, it's the same thing. I would like to go deeper. I would like to understand a little bit more, but at the same time, my level of understanding has served me well and seems to be adequate for the population that I'm working with. And I'm always learning. I mean, I'm always reading, I'm
Absolutely.
always researching. So no, not really.
Okay. And when you're integrating, are you doing it in like functional movement patterns or
Always.
yes,
Yeah.
I can't
I'm
stand
I'm
it
not a
when
yeah,
yeah,
I'm not a passive practitioner.
right.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
I
And
don't
it's not that
either.
I don't believe in it. I think, I mean, our brain, we have to have a memory. We have to, we learn through play. So,
Right.
um, absolutely. So there's
Okay.
always a functional movement associated with the movement pattern.
Right. Awesome.
Even with babies. I mean, especially with baby, people always
Right.
ask, like, how do you get babies to do what you need to do? And I was like, reflexes, it's easy.
Uh-huh.
They're pre-programmed if you know what buttons to push, basically.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Awesome. What would you tell your younger self, like if now looking back, what
Um,
advice would you give yourself, if
like
any?
younger OT self.
Yeah, younger OT self.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've enjoyed the journey. I think just don't be afraid to walk my own path.
Hmm.
Um, even though I've met my fair share of naysayers, especially when I started learning about tongue and lip ties, and those were very taboo. Just don't be afraid to buck the norm and walk my own path and keep asking questions and keep making friends with people who validate what I am learning and keep um, you know, always looking for good mentors, that kind of thing. I
Right.
mean, it's just about like I think with OT, it's so, I mean, and I knew this going into it, but it's definitely proven this way for me is that it is what you make of it. And
Absolutely.
I do have peers that have gone into OT and then actually got out of it and it just wasn't for them. And that's okay.
Hmm.
Like I respect
Hmm.
that. But for most of us, we got into it for a reason, that it's still there if you want to find the magic, but you have to make it sometimes.
You do have to
I
make it.
definitely have made it and remade it and remade it a few times. Because it doesn't compensate us for our time. Let's be honest. It is a very selfless profession. And it's very easy to burn out. It's very easy to be taken advantage of, especially as a new grad. And I've been fortunate that I've worked for myself most of my career,
Mhm.
um, which I know most people can't say. And I think, I mean, it is not fun. It's not been fun. It's not been easy. There are pros and cons to it all, So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you've got a lot of stuff going on, but what's your kind of goals in that next 5 years? Where do you want to
That's a really
be?
good question. I want to teach more. I teaching is my passion. I love explaining what I do to parents and to
Mhm.
therapists. I'm doing more of the therapist teaching mentoring right now, which I'm loving, and getting great feedback on. But yeah, I want to just expand my teaching platform and take it and broaden it, widen it. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. Perhaps there's a
Mhm.
book in there somewhere. But yeah, just make it more tangible. I'd love to make it a little more passive, you know. Passive income is the dream.
Right.
So, um,
Absolutely.
but I love treating too. I don't want to stop treating. I just want to treat less. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah, serve more
yeah,
by
serve
doing,
more,
yeah.
reach more seats. Yeah, more seats in the room kind of thing. But I think, yeah, I really think in the last year since I've been teaching a lot more, I found my voice and I have come to understand that I enjoy explaining things to people in a simple way. Like I enjoy simplifying what I do, whether it's for parents or therapists, and just watching them like we get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like mind blown, kind of like, okay. And then applying it, right? That's the whole point is if they can't touch it, they can't feel it, they can't see it, like they're not going to be able to apply it, whether it's parents or therapists. And I think that over the last, I don't know, 11 year, however long I've been in OT, wow, 13 years. Um, I've gotten good at that. I've gotten good at explaining things, not, I wouldn't say watering it down, but simplifying it in a way
Mhm.
that's tangible. And I want to do that more because I think that's what makes what we do work.
Right. It's a
So
gift. You're great at it. I
thank
mean,
you.
yeah, tell me a little bit about your mentorship or you said you're mentoring therapists right now.
Yeah, I've got two going at the moment, which is a bit
Okay.
of a juggling act.
Wow.
Um, well, one is a mentorship. It's on infant feeding and it's for therapists, so OT, PT, speech. And it's we meet weekly and we I have a module that's released every week with learning material, and this is a 6-week series. And we meet, we discuss case studies, and then throughout the week we review case studies and chat on a Slack channel. And they have basically unlimited-ish access to me. And my job is to give them um, a lot of it is to teach them how to evaluate and assess the baby from head to toe, really. And so I give them a protocol, my protocol, and they don't have to follow it, but we work through my protocol and really understand how especially I use reflexes, how we get information that way, but also how we use those to treat, and just kind of how to work foundationally from the bottom up, because a lot of the people in my mentorships have taken tons of feeding courses. They've
Mhm.
taken plenty of tongue tie courses. But they've had a hard time synthesizing all that information and really applying it. And
Mhm.
so my goal is that they leave a lot more confident in terms of performing an evaluation, or applying these to treatment sessions. And so I will sit on treatment sessions with them virtually too as part of our course, and
Wow.
actually coach through.
That's
But
amazing.
works because this is the application part. Like that is the whole point. It's all these courses are great and wonderful and there's amazing material, but it's hard to digest it in 3 days,
Right.
3 hours, whatever the
Yeah.
course is. And so it's very much sort of a real-time learning opportunity. So that's what I'm doing with that one. The other one is actually co-hosted by me and Kelsey Baker, who's an OT in Philadelphia. And we just decided to join forces and have a little fun and offer, because she also offers mentorships as well. And we offered this one. It was targeted to IBCLCs, because we work very closely with them, and they all wanted to take our other mentorships too. But ethically, it
Tell me
just
what IBCLC is.
sure. IBCLC is International Board Certified Lactation Consultant.
Wow.
So, um, those are, yeah, that's kind of the highest level of certification you can get as a lactation consultant. And I work very closely with them in my practice because they're often the ones referring infants to me, and I collaborate with them. I'm often on calls with them, and working side by side truly, because they are the ones working more closely usually with families because they can be seen more often, especially if they take insurance. They don't know.
Right.
But they also, they want to treat the whole body, and they have a lot of treatment within their scope of practice to an extent. And so um yeah, they wanted to take our mentorship courses, and ethically we felt like we were walking a fine line, and we wanted to stay in our lane as teachers. And so we offered a course specific to lactation consultants, which is also open to other therapists, but it is the material is targeted towards lactation consultant in terms of like what we're teaching them to practice and to treat and to assess and to evaluate all those things. So it's very similar in format to my other mentorship in terms of how it's run. Um, but yeah, just a different skill set, different demographic, sort of, not really demographic, different
Yeah.
skill set that we're teaching too. And it's 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks, this mentorship. So
Wow,
uh,
that's amazing. So you're giving them a course, they're watching the module, they're coming back, they're meeting with you, then they have access to you pretty much whenever they want, and you sit in on sessions.
I'm not sitting in on sessions during
Well,
the
virtually
one.
or,
But yes.
sometimes. Right.
Yeah, not for those, but yes, during my other mentorship, they each get
Yeah.
one like kind of free session, basically, where I do like a mentorship with them, or like a coaching session with them.
Right.
Yes.
So you're just pulling it all together, because I feel like sometimes, you go to a course and you're like, yes, that sounds amazing when you're in it, and then you go to apply it and it's something doesn't work right. And then it's like you just wish you had somebody to ask questions to. So you've
Well,
just
yeah,
pulled
you
it
want to see it
together.
again, right? Like you want to see it
Right.
again. You're like, show me that. I'm not quite sure. This isn't quite what I remember what they showed me, and so even if it's a recorded course, sometimes it's just not enough hands-on to be able to learn it, to learn it and apply it. So
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, the format of this is working for me for now. I'm learning as I go too. Um, but I like teaching, so it's fun, so just learning how to not overextend myself as a business owner, because this, all the teaching and kind of the side hustles are on top of being a
On top
therapist full
of
time
the,
too, right? Like I
Mhm.
am also a full-time therapist with a caseload of 20 something kids I see a week. So, you know,
And
um,
managing the clinic, sitting back eating your
absolutely.
bonbons, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've got clinic, I've got overhead, I've got all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And do you have employees currently?
I don't.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. It
All
is
right.
just me for the moment. So if anyone wants to come to Atlanta and train with me, though, I will train you.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes if you give me the information. I'm sure
Okay, cool.
people sign in on.
Awesome.
But so obviously you have like a ton of value to offer the OT community, speech community, whoever wants to do feeding. How do people access you, or, how can they take your course, find you, get on your mentorship?
The best way to find me is on Instagram. That's where I'm most present. It's, kind of a clearinghouse. Like that's where all my people sort of convene, and it seems
Okay.
to be my most what's the word? Engaged audience. So,
Mhm.
and honestly, I can't handle multiple social media platforms anyway. It is way too much for me. So,
Yeah.
Instagram, I am Nat the baby OT on Instagram, even though I don't just treat babies, but it's just easier to consolidate like that. So you can find me there. And there's links to email me, or you can direct message me, and I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay.
Um,
And your course, when is that coming out?
I don't know. Hopefully in another week or two.
Okay.
Just waiting on the feedback and seeing what I need to tweak and fine tune. But yeah. And then the one thing I haven't done, which I know you and I talked a little bit about, was get CEUs for it, because that is quite the process
It is
that I
the process.
just don't have the bandwidth for right now. But the cool thing, especially if you're an OT, is that NVCOT has relaxed their requirements quite a bit this year, to where you can get quite a few credits for courses that aren't actually accredited just by taking a quiz at the end of the course, basically, and submitting a
Right.
certificate. So
Yeah.
I will definitely be offering that for people that want to
Awesome.
do that. And I've done that with a few other courses as well. I've got some other pre-recorded courses, I think. Like I did a tongue tie before and after frenectomy
Mhm.
course for therapists or for clinicians. I recorded that one. That one's online. And then I last year I was doing these campfire chats, and
Yeah.
they fizzled out because I just ran out of time and got distracted
Yeah.
by other projects. But it was because I had therapists asking me kind of these questions, was like, they kept saying, well, how did you get into this? Tell me more. Can I pick your brain? And it's very flattering, but I don't have that much time. So
Absolutely.
I decided to just, you know, hop online and basically offer a campfire chats where people could pay for a seat and they could ask me all the questions. And, they had a topic. So I would talk about
Mhm.
a specific topic, but then I was also an open book and we could discuss case studies and whatnot. So those are recorded too. And there's, I think, 5 or 6 online as well on my
Okay.
website, which is
Okay.
direct from my Instagram too. So,
Okay. And they can go on,
um,
I think I saw, and purchase a campfire chat and
yeah, you can do
watch.
that too.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm,
Awesome.
trying to make as much material available as possible, especially, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I'm
Right.
having conversations, I might as well record them and make them available to everybody. At least
Yes.
that's what I'm doing now. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's amazing, Nat.
thanks. I'm
Amazing. Yeah.
busy to say the
Yeah,
least.
you are. Okay, well, Instagram it is. And is there anything else that you want to share? Brag on yourself? There's plenty to brag on.
I am also, I think my next mentorship is going to be a toddler feeding mentorship
Ooh.
because that is in high demand. So, um, it will be for basically like 8 months to, I don't know, 2, 3.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's gonna be a mentorship format. I haven't quite finalized it, but it's all outlined and almost ready to launch. I just have to figure out the format. And I think I like the mentorship format the best.
Mhm.
Um, for now anyway, just because pre-recording a course takes a lot of time and energy. And honestly, I really think when it comes to this feeding stuff and application of it, I like that the tangibility of having this back and forth with my mentees so
Mhm.
they can ask questions real time. We can discuss case studies. We can't really do, I know there's other hybrid models, but um, I like it. So anyway, toddler feeding is definitely on the horizon. I know I've had a lot of interest in it as well. And I love it. Like that's actually my biggest population right now that
Is
I'm
it
treating. It's not, I see babies, I see a good handful of babies, but my largest portion of my caseload right now is about 12 to 24 months.
okay?
Um, I love those kids. Those are like the black hole because most people don't know what to do with them, or they are intimidating because they're wild cards,
Hmm.
because they're hard to predict and they're hard to control. And we can't make it like you can't really plan your session. You kind of can, you can plan the outcome, you can plan the goal, you know what you need to work on that day, but it's very child led.
Hmm.
And, but honestly, they're just big versions of the babies. So understanding the babies and understanding the progression of how that oral motor complex should have gone, and knowing where it has the opportunity to mess up makes the big kids make so much sense.
Hmm.
So once you understand that, it's like, we just have to go backwards.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. So, any advice to these newer therapists out there that want to get started into feeding?
I would say look at the whole body, don't get so hung up on things like tongue ties and that's important. It's a huge part of my practice too, but learn a little bit and then move on. And if there's something you're interested in niche wise, like if it's breathing, if it's reflex integration, if it's vision, do it. Take the course. Like don't think, well, that's not what my population. I mean, if you're interested in it and you want to come to work and you want that to be your focus and you're excited about it, then do it, take the course and get better at it. And then make that your specialty. People will travel to come see you. If you are the one regionally who is good at vision, who is good at reflexes, who is good at all that stuff. Not that everybody has to be a specialist. There is a place for generalists. I get that. But if you want to still like your job in 5 years, pick something that interests you and like go with it,
Yeah.
don't just take that new course because they just came out and everybody's taking it and you just need to take it because everyone else now has it too. Cause I see that
Mhm.
a lot in my
I do
profession.
too. I do
A
too.
lot. It's very much like, oh, that one's
Just
popular now. Everybody's
checking
going to
off the
get it.
box. I need my
Yes.
CEUs. Oh, that one's the cheapest. I'm going to do that one. It's like, well, what do you
Even if
want to do?
they're not cheap, but
No.
I'm shocked at how some people can afford these things. But yeah, take the courses, and I mean, also if there's a course you really want to take and it's expensive, don't be afraid to ask for a breakdown. Don't be afraid to ask for a payment plan. You'd be surprised what people are willing to do. And
Mhm.
I mean, most people are in this field, to build everybody up. I wouldn't say everybody, but most people are,
Most
and
people,
really
yeah.
generous with their time. And not that they're going to give you anything for free. Nobody's going to do that because we should all value our time. But we also know that we have student loans and we have, overhead and we have other things. And we have kids and we have families and we have, other
Mhm.
expenses. And so sometimes our employer, if you have one, doesn't cover the cost of continuing it. So, um, yeah, don't be afraid to like keep learning that thing and do the thing that scratches the itch in your brain. Like if you have this one really interesting kid and that's the one you always think about, like go learn more about whatever was going on with that kid. I mean, truly,
Love
you
it.
have to like what you do and you have to want to go to work because this job is hard sometimes.
It is hard
Very
sometimes.
thankless. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that you kinda nailed it on the head there, like, I'm just seeing more and more and more about people being burnt out, and I get it.
I do.
But I mean, I've done this for 25 years and the reimbursement keeps going down. And so your productivity has to go up. But you have to find what lights that fire. What do you like? What, fills you up. And you just have to do that part. So,
Yeah, and I mean, not unfortunately. I mean, I like having side hustles and whatnot, but I mean, I feel like sometimes it's the only way to go in this profession. If you want to, it just depends. It depends on what you need to make out of it, what you need from this job and from this profession. But I don't think that I could. Again, I could choose to make my brick and mortar practice bigger and go that route and make more money that way, or I could choose to create a stream that will hopefully bring me passive income and teach and do those things. And so that's what I'm choosing to do right now because that's within my bandwidth, my means,
right.
etc. But
And you're sharing by training more people that can serve other clients.
yeah, but I'm in a position as a business owner to do that and not everybody is. So, I think the other thing with OT is like if you're not happy where you're working, find another job if you can. Not everybody can, but like there's a huge shortage of OTs. There's a huge shortage of therapists, period, good ones. And so, just it's not worth being miserable. Your clients can tell.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's just you have to find the thing that lights your fire. And I definitely have found mine. So
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for all your information today. I'm so excited for
welcome.
you. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I've
I
kind of,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Bye, Nat.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too.